This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I'm your host, Noah Tsaluki, and on today's episode, Michigan and Michigan State, the Big Ten tournament has been set. We will break that one down for you, a little Big Ten tournament preview for both of our college basketball teams in the state of Michigan. Also, big news with the Lions just releasing today. Kenny Golladay, the Lions will not have put the franchise tag on him. What does this mean for the future of the Lions and Kenny Galladay's future? We'll break that all down for you right here on Open Mic Night. Glad you're with us here today. The weather is getting nicer. I know here in Cleveland, where I am right now, every single day it's just getting warmer and warmer. And, you know, I've talked about a little bit about it before. I am involved with the John Carroll football team here on campus, and I just graduated last semester, a semester early, but I'm still hanging around. I'm still helping out with the sports information department and the football team at John Carroll, and it's really great. I'm able to be a part of it. The fall season was canceled, or it was postponed. So no 2020 fall season, but they did push it to the spring. So we are getting 5 games in the spring, and our first game is Friday, actually. So I'm really excited for it, and it just feels good to see football again at the college level, especially right here at the small school, because I missed a lot of it, you know, seeing it live last year in the fall. So I'm excited. I know there's a lot of excitement around here for it. And it just makes me in a happier mood, you know, just to see more sports and being able to cover it, broadcast, all that stuff that I love doing. I've loved doing it since freshman year of high school, and I really appreciate the opportunity. But I did want to dive into Michigan and Michigan State basketball. So what an interesting weekend with basketball. I mean, Michigan State and Michigan playing back-to-back games. First one was on Thursday, the home game for Michigan. That was the game that they won 69-50. They locked up the Big Ten with the win. The game before, they lost to Illinois, number 4, 76-53. And Michigan State ended up winning against Indiana. So that kind of got a lot of the experts thinking, okay, Michigan State might make it now. You know, they're getting closer and closer. And then that Sunday game came against the Wolverines. It was at Michigan State, senior night, all that, and they won 70-64. And this is what I can't stand. First of all, I don't like Michigan fan telling me, oh, well, you know, Michigan didn't have anything to play for. They didn't have anything to play for. I am so sick of that excuse from people. I'm so sick of that excuse of saying that, you know, Michigan had everything to play for, that's why they lost to Michigan State. No, this is a rivalry game. These guys want to go out there and they want to play their best. It had nothing to do with they're not being anything on the line for Michigan or anything. I got a couple of Michigan fans that text me that over the weekend, and I was disappointed because I said, no, you can't say that. You think Michigan's going to go out there and not want to beat their rival? Of course they're going to want to go out there and beat them. And that's what the rivalry is all about. Only the third loss for Michigan all season. Michigan State finishing well down the stretch. And it looks like now that the tournament is in lock. I mean, Joe Lunardi from ESPN, among others, they really think Michigan State could be one of those last 4 teams in, you know, the bubble teams that actually finally make it. So it'll be interesting to see where they get seeded. And it doesn't even matter really at this point how they finish in the Big Ten in the tournament. If they win a couple games here and there, I mean, it would be nice to win. I'm sure it would help in terms of seeding and all that, but definitely it doesn't seem to matter at this point. Michigan locking up that 1 seed, and then Michigan State getting a 9 seed. How about that? Think about how strong the Big Ten is this year. And by the way, Michigan State has more top 5 wins than anybody in the entire country. There's 19 teams that have 1 top 5 win. 19 teams. Michigan State has 3 top 5 wins. They beat Michigan, they beat Ohio State, and they beat Illinois. How about that? And this isn't even Tom Izzo's best team. I mean, this is in terms of record, this is one of the worst teams he's had in a while. They still mustered 3 top 5 wins. I mean, just this whole season has been uncertain from all different points of view, and you know, I guess there's some instances where anything can happen this year. Miracles can happen. And Michigan State doing a great job there. But I find it interesting, too, because when I saw that Michigan State got the 9 seed, the first thing I thought of was, oh my gosh, look at how strong the Big Ten is. A 9 seed. They are an underdog seed in their own conference tournament, and they're still predicted to make the NCAA tournament. I just was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's amazing. That just shows the depth of the Big Ten. So Michigan getting that 1 seed, Illinois with the 2, Iowa with the 3. How about that, by the way, speaking of Iowa, Luka Garza, number 55, the senior for the Hawkeyes. He got his number retired on senior day. You don't see that too often. You don't see seniors getting their number retired basically as soon as they graduate or when their last game is. That just speaks to what a character Luka Garza is. And I've watched him over the years, play Michigan State, and he's definitely a good player for sure. And he's meant a lot to that Hawkeye program, and I know he really represents the University of Iowa very well. So that was really cool to see. Him crying and just very emotional about that, and it's a really big honor. And it just really, really made me happy. It just made me kind of cry up inside, I guess. It's cool when you see moments like that in sports. So congrats to Luka Garza right here from Open Mic Night Podcast. So they get the 3 seed. Purdue gets the 4 seed. Ohio State slipping to the 5th seed. Wisconsin 6, Rutgers 7, Maryland 8, Michigan State 9, Indiana 10. And then the other games, there's Penn State, Northwestern, Minnesota, and Nebraska. I don't see any of those teams doing much. However, Minnesota did beat Michigan. 13 seed Minnesota beating Michigan at the barn in Minneapolis. That was one of their 3 losses this season. I do really want to see a Michigan State rematch. I think it'd be really cool to watch if they can beat Maryland. That game's at 11:30 Eastern Time on March 11th. So if Michigan State wins, they'll play Michigan on Friday, March 12th. That's also an 11:30 a.m. tip-off. So I'm excited to see this. I would love to see Michigan State. And, there's some guys that are playing well down the stretch for them. I know Josh Langford has stepped up. We've seen Joey Hauser step up in some ways. Aaron Henry has stepped up big time. Gabe Brown. These guys all have experience, coming in. And I know Joey Hauser transfer. I know he didn't play last year, but he did play a lot at Marquette his freshman year with his brother Sam, who's at Virginia. But there's a lot of guys that have tournament experience here. And it would be awesome to see that experience come out. And we just didn't see it a whole lot in the regular season, but maybe something happens with Michigan State that they just start turning the Jets on when they get to the Big Ten tournament. We're going to have to see how they play against Maryland. If they play well against Maryland, they may have a shot against Michigan. We'll have to see, though. We'll have to see because, to my knowledge, there's not a ton of upsets that happen in the Big Ten tournament a lot. It's not like the NCAA where you see, 11 seeds beating 6 seeds a lot or, things like that. It happens every year kind of thing. It doesn't happen often, at least to my knowledge. So we'll have to see. But I would love a Michigan State rematch because both teams are going to go at it like crazy. And it'll be exciting. So Indianapolis will be the site of the Big Ten basketball tournament for all the games. And then, of course, in the state of Indiana is where they're going to have the NCAA tournament this year. So it'll be exciting to see. And I know, on the side note, at John Carroll here, we were not able to have a national tournament. So Division III did not have a national tournament, but Division I is definitely getting one. And it'll be exciting because, remember, this has not happened in 2 years, a tournament. Remember the Big Ten tournament was canceled. There were a couple games that were played, but I don't think Michigan State was in that because they had gotten, that quarterfinal bye. And then there was no national tournament. So it just makes people even more excited. I got the email the other day saying, join my buddy's bracket league on ESPN. And I'm excited because it's been 2 years. And I love playing March Madness brackets and all that. And it's fun filling out brackets. And hopefully next week when the bracket comes out, I'll be sharing it a little bit on the podcast because I just love I fill out a lot of brackets. And, it's fun. It's fun playing on ESPN, especially if you get a whole group of people, like 50, 60, 70 people, like my buddy gets. He just gets all his friends, and then I have people that join, and more friends have people that join. So it's just a big pot of people, and it's good. It's a lot of fun. and some good money at stake. But that's not why I do it. I just do it for the fun, and it's fun. It's fun watching, and I'm excited to see what happens here in the NCAA tournament. Michigan State kicking it into high gear. Michigan, obviously, I know there's some talented players, but they're not playing well down the stretch. But we'll have to see if Juwan Howard, not a ton of tournament experience. I mean, this is only his second year compared to Izzo's 26th year, I believe. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens, and it'll be very exciting. That's for sure. Okay, moving on now to the Lions. This is some interesting news coming from Allen Park. I know it's been a long time since we talked about the Lions. It's been a couple episodes for sure. I know every week we talk about them during the season. They just, they're the most popular team in Detroit, and something's always popping up with them. But I decided to hold off on some of the smaller news till later. But this is definitely big news, and this is worth mentioning here on the podcast. But the Lions reportedly not using the franchise tag on Kenny Golladay. Whoa. Wait a second. I thought Kenny Golladay was really happy to be in Detroit. When Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and the new regime was announced, it seemed like publicly he was fine. He was cool. He says, I want to stay. And remember, we had a little bit of talk on previous episodes about what they were going to do with the franchise tag. Was it going to be Kenny Golladay? Was it going to be Romeo Okwara? There was some talk about that, some others, but I thought it should have been Kenny Golladay. I mean, you look at this guy, and he's a very, very productive receiver. I mean, there are instances where he plays like a top 10 receiver in the NFL. I mean, the plays that he was making, it was really from day one. And we caught those 2 touchdowns against the Cardinals. I mean, this was a guy that they really, really were high on in the 3rd round. I know he's a Bob Quinn pick and all that, but a guy that I really, really think could be a solid piece, for the future of the Lions. But now all of a sudden this news comes out, and it just makes me think, because he's a free agent, he could be going other places. He could be exploring other options. And I mean, I don't know. It just seems like at this point, first reaction, I don't know. I just really don't know. I guess he'd maybe have to figure out what the Lions are leaning to in the draft. I think the draft is a big thing too. We'll get to that in a moment, because I think this thing with Kenny Golladay could really, this could really determine who the Lions draft. But I mean, we all know Kenny Golladay is a special player, and is he Calvin Johnson? I wouldn't say so. Is he Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill? Probably not, but I mean, there are moments he flashes like them, but I wouldn't. The main knock on Kenny Golladay is that he's been hurt, and it's risky for some teams to pay these guys if there's a risk. I mean, look at Kerryon Johnson. Look at how much risk was involved there. With his knees. I mean, he had all those knee problems and everything. He was supposed to be the savior at running back and all that. And now they're transitioning more to DeAndre Swift. And I'm not saying it's the same situation, because, I mean, who has really challenged Kenny Golladay? But, I mean, there's a point where, maybe the injuries will catch up to him. Maybe he's not worth re-signing the big money, because I have a feeling Kenny Golladay is going to ask for a lot of money. He's going to want to be paid like one of the big-time players in the NFL, big-time receivers. He's going to want to be paid like Julio Jones, and he's going to want to be paid like Tyreek Hill and all them. From my perspective, I love Kenny Golladay. I want him to stay from a fan perspective, but just from a money perspective, from a salary cap perspective, I just don't know. I don't know if the Lions can really do it. I mean, there's just too many question marks. And, I mean, when he's healthy, he produces, but, who knows what's going to happen next season? It's just so hard to predict, and I don't know. I mean, it just seems like, and I know publicly he had talked about when Matthew Stafford was here, how he wanted to stay, and I know he has that great connection with Matthew, but, I mean, he would be the number one guy if he stayed. I mean, Marvin Jones looks like he's leaving. I mean, Danny Amendola looks like he's gone. I mean, who's next? Quintez Cephas? I don't know. Actually, speaking of wide receiver, a couple little news that came out a couple weeks ago. Tyrell Williams, the former Chargers and Raiders receiver, was signed by the Lions. Oh, does this mean that Kenny has new competition for a number one? No. If it's one of those things where I'm the number one guy, like I don't want to be splitting catches with this. No, this Tyrell Williams signing, I don't think has anything to do with Kenny Golladay and the franchise tag and all that. I think Tyrell Williams is a solid, maybe number 3 could work his way up to a number 2. I don't think he's a number 1 receiver. I mean, he's had production. I mean, he'll get 40, 50 catch seasons. Production somewhat with the Chargers, somewhat with the Raiders. I mean, it's nothing off the charts. It's nothing of a number 1 level, but it's definitely a player that could add experience to the Lions with Jared Goff and give him a solid weapon. It's been in the league for a little bit, just piling up numbers. I mean, not big time numbers, but just catches here and there that can help move the ball. And I think Tyrell Williams I don't think there's anything to hurt. I mean, 1 year, $6 million, I believe, and so I mean, there's no risk in that. I mean, I think it's just a small signing, and we'll have to see. I think it just adds to the wide receiver depth for sure. But I was a little disappointed to hear about Kenny Golladay. I thought the Lions might want to do that, but I just wonder, like, who's going to be that guy? Are they going to really franchise tag Romeo Okwara? I don't know. They got to pick somebody, and I don't know. Romeo Okwara. I mean, he had a 10-sack season. He had a really good year, but is he worth the franchise tag? I don't know. I thought Kenny Golladay was definitely a home run in terms of the guy you would want to franchise, but maybe Brad Holmes and company want to move in a different direction. Again, this is just breaking news right now. I'm sure that the story will develop more throughout the coming days, but just kind of my initial reaction with that. And I did mention I want to talk a little bit about the draft now, because if Kenny Golladay leaves, if he goes to hey, who knows? What if he goes to LA and goes with Stafford? I mean, you never know. You never know where they're going to end up. What does this mean for the Lions in the draft? I mean, you look at all these reports that, maybe the Lions will take a quarterback. Maybe they'll take a receiver. Maybe they'll take a linebacker. They need this. They need that. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways the Lions could go, and I've talked about that on previous podcasts, and it's no secret. I mean, this could go anywhere. I think a lot of people maybe want to take that quarterback, but once Jared Goff came into the mix, there was people were backing off like, they might not need a quarterback this year, because he was that bridge quarterback between now and whoever they'll draft maybe in the coming years. But there have been reports out lately that the Lions could target Kyle Pitts from Florida. And I know the Lions fans, their initial reaction, and some of these fans I just can't stand, their initial reaction is going to be, well, we need another wide receiver? I mean, we already have TJ. I mean, look at all the wide receivers we've drafted before. I mean, Ebron, a tight end, bust. If you go back to Matt Millen with Charles Rogers and all these other guys that I can't even remember their names off the top of my head. But, I mean, it seems like the only wide receiver the Lions have any luck drafting in the past 20 years or so has been maybe Roy Williams and Calvin Johnson. And it's nothing else is worth. And then Kenny Golladay. I mean, you could add him to the list. I mean, there's not a whole lot. I mean, Calvin Johnson definitely was a game changer. He's sitting in the Hall of Fame. He'll be in Canton in August. But this Kyle Pitts is a little intriguing to me. And I'm not saying we should draft him. I'm not saying the Lions should draft him. I'm not saying anything, but I just want to explore this option a little bit just in case Kenny Golladay doesn't sign, because at that point, you're going to need a number 1 wide receiver. And we mentioned before, Tyrell Williams, he's not a number 1 wide receiver. Quintez Cephas, not a number 1 wide receiver. Marvin Jones can be, but he's probably going to be gone, and he's a little bit past the prime of his career, I think, and with some speed and all that. So they're going to need somebody, and I mean, wouldn't it be great to have a game-changing wide receiver right off the bat, a guy that's just such a can't-miss guy? The interesting thing with Kyle Pitts, though, is that he's listed as 6'6", 240 pounds, and he was a tight end in college. So he was a tight end at the University of Florida. Calvin was about the same size. He's 6'5", 230, somewhere in there, and he had blazing fast speed. I don't know exactly the 40-yard dash time on Kyle Pitts, but I mean, I assume it's very fast, just like Cal. Some people out there, and I've heard it, saying that this guy is very similar to Calvin Johnson. And what have the Lions been needing since Calvin Johnson retired? Kind of that number 1 X receiver. And Kenny Golladay can be that at times, but he just doesn't have the body like Calvin did. That intimidating 6'6", 240 that runs a 4.3, is a Hall of Fame. I don't know. There's just times that Kenny Golladay looks skinny out there. and that, I mean, that's just me. But he does, just to me, it doesn't. It's not like he has like an intimidating presence. And I think Kyle Pitts could be that guy who has an intimidating presence out there. And I don't think he's going to play tight end. I don't think he's going to play tight end in at the NFL level. I think this guy could be a wide receiver. But again, there's question marks with that because, has he ever played wide receiver? And, he was transitioning from the tight end position to the receiver position. How long is it going to take him to transition? Their questions are, is he fast enough for that position? Because the Lions already have TJ Hockenson in the tight end position lockdown. I mean, TJ was a Pro Bowler this past year. I think that the Lions are going to be throwing the ball to him more with Anthony Lynn's offense, his offensive scheme. So it just makes me think maybe Kyle Pitts is the guy that you take at 7. I don't know. Look, 5-11 Lions. Are 5-11 teams, are bottom 10 teams in the NFL, are they really going to pick a wide receiver? Is that their main need? Not necessarily. I think there's other needs on this team. I think the Lions need a really, really good pass rusher up front. I think they need a good middle linebacker to survey that middle of the defense. But, it's tough because Kyle Pitts, he's such an intimidating presence. And the Lions, if Kenny Golladay leaves, they're going to need somebody. They're going to need a number one guy, a guy that's intimidating like Calvin Johnson was and catching those deep balls and going deep and catching balls all over the place. They're going to need somebody like that, especially for a young quarterback in the future, a guy that the young quarterback can really count on and really help develop. And I think Kyle Pitts could be that guy. The draft coming up in late April, early May. So we do have a while, but just my initial reaction from this Kenny Golladay thing, I don't know. Kyle Pitts could be the guy. Or, I feel like he's going to be in the top 10. There are other options to trade down and maybe acquire some more picks. I know we already have some more picks for the future with Matthew Stafford, a third rounder this year as well. But then that's the other thing. Speaking of lower picks, receivers these days, they're sort of like a dime a dozen. And now, not everybody's going to be like Kyle Pitts. Not everybody's going to be that top 10 pick, that intimidating 6'6", 240 presence out there with blazing speed. But there are some lower picks that you can find value for. There's guys. Look at Antonio Brown. He was a 6th round pick, and he was one of the best receivers of the NFL in the last decade. There's guys out there that you can find in lower rounds that could be very, very productive for you. So I think the Lions should definitely try to look at that. Maybe, that'd be definitely a cheaper pick as well, But I don't know. Speaking of some more Kenny Golladay news, the news just keeps pouring in. And remember, this is a developing story, so be sure to tune in to Sports Illustrated Lions or Free Press, Detroit News, all that. Pride of Detroit, our friends that have been on the podcast before. Also, Matt Derry's Locked on Lions. I'm sure he'll give you a lot more news as well. Speaking of Matt Derry, on his Facebook fan page, he said, hearing that some insiders at the Lions facility would rather have the compensatory pick than franchise Kenny Golladay. Also concerned with him already turning $18 million a year at age 28, November 2. Stay tuned. So stay tuned to his Locked on Lions podcast. I'm sure that'll be coming out tonight. But I thought that was interesting. $18 million. He's turning that down at age 28 years old from the Lions. More developing news. And I don't know. It's just maybe he just probably wants to go somewhere else. It's probably similar to Stafford where he wanted to be with Stafford. And, then he was all excited about it and Stafford staying. And I'm really excited for the future with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes and all that. And then, once he declines that and once, they don't want to use the franchise, other places look a lot better. The grass looks greener in other places. So it's sad. And, but who knows? He could re-sign. You never know. But at this point, I don't know. It just seems like he's out. And it's sad, but the Lions move on. And it is what it is. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in the draft and more free agency coming in. And I'm excited. It's the Lions are 24/7 news, and it just never, ever stops. But thanks again for tuning in to Open Mic Night. And make sure to check out all the other content, Michigan Podcast, the wrestling podcast, gambling podcast if you're into gambling, Doc and Jock, the Fan Report, all that and more on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. It's been a blast doing this for you guys. And next week, hopefully we'll get into some more March Madness once the tournament becomes a little more clear, once some teams have been weeded out of their conference tournaments and all that. Shout out to Oakland, by the way, the Oakland Grizzlies. They'll battle the Cleveland State Vikings tonight for the Horizon League tournament. So and they have a losing record too. They're 12-17 as a 3 seed. If they win, they're going to the NCAA tournament. Greg Campy and company, first time in I think 10 years. So good luck to the Grizzlies. But Cleveland State having a really good year. I know they turn it around with their second-year head coach. He was a guy from Florida State. Some of my friends over here have paid attention to that team, so they know all about Oakland and UDM and the Horizon League basketball. I know we don't talk about that a lot, but best of luck to the Grizzlies. And I know our friend Matt Derry has done some work for the Grizzlies as well, and it's fun. The O-Arena, a great atmosphere, a black court, and the only stadium in the country, to my knowledge, that's named the O-Arena. Instead of just an arena, it's the O-Arena for Oakland. So best of luck to them in the Horizon League Championship. Thanks again, folks, for tuning in. It'll be another exciting edition next week, only on Open Mic Night.